Welcome to Season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking with wellbeing experts who can help you to stay well as you plan your exit. If you're almost ready to leave and you need to redo your resume, check out my Resume Revamp digital download. It's a comprehensive guide to making your resume show off your assets. For $49.95 Australian dollars, you'll get pre-filled, eye-pleasing resume and cover letter templates in both US letter and A4 size, a lexicon of teacher terminology with a translation to corporate speak, and a bonus PDF on getting past applicant tracking software. Check out the Resume Revamp package on the product page of larksong.com.au and come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 8. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really delighted to be speaking with Barbara Clifford, known as the Time Tamer and also co-director of the Hinwood Institute. Thanks so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today, Barbara.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay, so Barbara, I've got so many questions for you. First of all, tell us about the Hinwood Institute and what that is and what you do and how you help people.
So I started out with a passion for making sense of things, of creating order out of chaos and helping people be more productive, which is why I became known as the Time Tamer. And through that journey, when I started with that work, I discovered that time management and stress management go hand in hand. And I actually studied with the Stress Management Institute for a little while, and went through that process of studying with the Stress Management Institute. My incredible mentor, Dr. John Hinwood, unfortunately passed away. And my colleague and I were talking about this incredible body of work that was going to be lost with his passing. And so, long story short, he and I decided to consolidate all of our knowledge. So my colleagues' knowledge, Dr. John Hinwood's knowledge, and my knowledge, and we created a new company called the Hinwood Institute. And it's the name Hinwood is honouring our incredible mentor, Dr. John Hinwood. But now it encompasses so much more than just time management and stress management, which are my passions. We actually focus on other key elements such as leadership and communication and well-being, all of these things that feed into each other to help people to be more resilient and be able to roll with the punches and bounce back from adversity.
So that is a beautiful legacy, actually, that you kind of created on his behalf.
Yeah, I guess it became a realization. And while everything has cycles, doesn't it? There's beginnings and ends. There's when one door closes, another one opens. And I know you know this more than anybody, Elizabeth, in terms of creating opportunity and looking for new horizons. And so while there's a great level of sadness with his passing, what that birthed is another incredible opportunity and wonderful rounded resource that's now more than ever with COVID and all of the things that are happening, that's so needed for the world in terms of adapting and to all of these complex challenges that just come out of nowhere.
So, Barbara, what inspired you to go down that pathway?
My background is actually in film and television. I started my career when I was 14 hosting a children's television program. That's when my career started.
Really? That's so cool. What's that called?
Oh, look, this is back in the 80s. This is 80s regional television in Western Australia. It was a terrible show called Kids Unlimited. And so I was one of 4 kids that hosted this kids TV program. It was pretty average. But that started my career. That was my first job. That was my very first job. And so I worked in the film and television industry for 20 years. And I know that your listeners probably go through the same sort of experience I went through, is that there came a time in my life where I went, am I really this person? Does this really fill my soul? And do I really want to keep going on this journey? Because I don't know if I'm that same person anymore. I got to a point where I was doing a lot of personal and professional development and feeling more confident about myself and looking deep inside, going, who am I really, and what am I passionate about, and what are my strengths and weaknesses? And what I discovered, and what I now work with people with, is to identify something that is really strong inside of you that you dismiss, because it's there all the time. You don't pay attention to it, but it's where your genius is and what you truly love to do. And so at that point in my life, I went, well, what is that? What am I really passionate about? Who am I, and what am I excited by? And when I did that work and did some testing, I was really surprised to find out that organizing and being organized and getting things organized is what I'm really passionate about. Like, I love making sense of things, of creating order out of chaos, and really just making things simple for people, taking the stress out of it, and making things less complicated and more achievable, so people don't feel overwhelmed and they feel more inspired and motivated to do things that are aligned with their core of who they are and where their genius lies.
So you sound, Barbara, like you're the yin to my yang. Like, I'm so disorganized, and if you saw my inbox, you'd be crying right now. So, okay, I want to ask you, just to go back a little bit. You said something that really caught my attention, and now I've lost the train of thought. We were talking about go back. Tell me what you just said.
About making sense of things, of creating order out of chaos, simplifying things for people.
I think it was the bit about when you were changing careers.
Yes. And so at the core of who I was, and like, who am I really, and what ignites my soul, and what's sometimes, quite often for people, there's things that we dismiss because it's there all the time, but it's actually a power inside of us that we can take advantage of.
Okay, thank you. So how did you find that out? What you said you did some tests. Tell us about that.
So one of the first things I did was I went to a seminar where this man, his name's Ben Harvey, and his company's called Authentic Education. And he was at the time doing lots of public speaking. And one of the things that he does is teach people how to build a business. How do you actually build a business out of something that you're really passionate about? And one of the things that he said to do was to do some testing around your core values. What is it that you place value on? Mm-hmm. And there's a man by the name of Dr. John Demartini, who has an incredible speaker. He speaks around the world, and that's essentially his business. He helps people get clear and evaluate what it is that they place value on. And when I say values, we don't mean things like honesty, integrity, authenticity. They're things that you aspire to be, like they're values you want to live by. But the sort of things the testing that I did was, what really floats my boat? And sometimes we feel guilty. It's this hidden sin. And when you actually are really honest with yourself and look deeply, you can see these common threads. So I did this method of testing that Dr. John Demartini talked about in one of his books. It was a book called Inspired Destiny. And he asks you a series of something like 15 questions, and you have to answer what it is. Like, for example, when you go to parties, what is something you always talk about? When you get lost on social media or go down a rabbit warren on Google surfing, what things capture your attention? And we want to say things that sound good, like, it's professional development, or it's, neuroscience, or whatever it is. But if we're really honest with yourselves, for me, it can be things like, I love watching Survivor. I get really caught up watching reality TV shows, but what it is in that is understanding how people negotiate, how they communicate, how they can regain a sense of power in a community, how they lead. All of those things absolutely fascinate me. That's why I love watching trashy reality TV.
Yeah. Oh, you would be appalled. I've been watching Dr. Pimple Popper. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah,
my
I
gosh.
love watching that too.
It's so
There's something very
cathartic.
satisfying about it, isn't it?
And then she like stitches it all up neatly, and it's just like this seamless solution.
Do you know on Wish, I've seen on Wish, this is totally off topic, but on Wish you can actually buy silicone replicas of squeezing pimples. So you can put something to satisfy that.
Oh, the ultimate birthday present. How funny. Terrible. Okay, sorry, we really went right. Okay. Okay, so you did these tests and you found out that floating your boat showed up in the sense of
being organized,
and creating order from chaos. Fantastic.
Yeah. And so, Elizabeth, what that did for me, and this is where you have to take a good hard look at yourself in the mirror sometimes and go, who am I? If I take the mask off, who am I really? You know, we present ourselves as, for me, it's about being a successful career woman, about being a good mother, about being a good partner, of having a high level of emotional intelligence. But that's how I want to present to the world. But who am I really? And so it's really interesting when you uncover that and look at it. And so I didn't know that being organized was this thread. Like when you do the testing and the scoring, you basically score it. And so it might not be the first answer or the second answer you write down. It might be the third. But if it appears throughout all the testing, then it scores really highly. It's like this undercurrent that exists. That's why you don't always see it. And when I stopped and looked, I went, that totally makes sense, because throughout my career, that was a common thread. As a filmmaker, I say to people, as a filmmaker, I'm a brilliant waitress, because as a filmmaker, you have to complement your career with other things. And waitressing was great because I could do it casually and it could fill up the gaps in my film industry career. So I worked in the film industry. I worked in marketing. I worked in hospitality marketing and all of those different areas. The common thread was where I just fell into a position of being organized. So when I was working in hospitality waitressing, they'd say, oh, you're so good at this. Can you supervise this dining room? And then, do you want to work full time as the function coordinator? And I'd be going, no, I'm a filmmaker, not a waitress. And when I was working in the film industry, I really wanted to be a director, but I kept moving into the organizational roles. So the production manager, the producer, those roles within the film industry that are very much based on getting things organized. And so I guess there's the creative side of me, is finding creative solutions to thinking outside of the box and being creative in the solution process. Yeah.
We've got so many commonalities there. I feel like that whole creative side is certainly something that I like. I remember I used to work in a pen shop in the city in Sydney that was beautiful high-end fountain pens, and my boss was away one time and he used to do the pen repair, so he brought in a former employee just to come for a few weeks while he was away, so she could do it. But there was this one day someone brought in an ancient pencil, like a grey lead, like a clutch pencil with a metal brass barrel, so it was quite old, and they somehow managed to shove the eraser right down into the barrel, like right down, so it was impossible to get out. You couldn't get tweezers down there or anything. And so she was trying to fix it, and the boss is away and she's getting a bit flustered because we had to solve this problem for this customer. And I said, oh, she had a thing that was like a hat pin, like a metal rod with a point on it with a wooden handle. And I said, what if we put that over the Bunsen burner and heat up the end, and then we shoved it into the rubber and just like it sort of stuck to it and we pulled it out. But I just that was, I don't know, 30 years ago or something, and I'm still excited by the way I was able to solve that problem. So
yeah,
I totally.
You're like MacGyver. You remember the show MacGyver, where he'd get a rubber band and a matchbox and be able to
fix the airplane or something. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Okay, so let's get to the reason that I asked you to come today, which was really more around that. Creating that environment in your life that enables you to function at your best. Do you have any strategies? So this season of the podcast is really around helping people to stay well while they plan their exit strategy out of education and into a life they love. What strategies can you share with us that are really like concrete, useful, meaty, that can help with that?
I think, so as I mentioned before, time management and stress management go hand in hand. And planning that exit is obviously about, I know, especially within the teaching industry, what is common is this high level of personal integrity. You know, that's what I see, because a lot of my clients are teachers or have been in the teaching industry or nursing, interestingly. And so there's this innate commitment and compassion and self-sacrificing to others, because that's the nature of teaching, is caring for the well-being and the education of a group of young people often. So what happens with that is putting the needs of others, getting used to and comfortable with putting the needs of others before the needs of yourself. And so some things to think about in that process, if I can simplify it, is recognizing what's important to you. And that's along the lines of what I was saying about the journey that I went on, going, at the end of the day, what is important to me? Who do I want to be? What do I want in my life? What do I value in my life? What's the person I want to be? Who do I want to be to my children, to my spouse, to my community? And you might find in the career that you have that it doesn't support that. So, and if that may be what's triggering the change, is that I want more time. I don't want to be this stressed.
Yeah.
Or I'm done. I've given this a good time. Yeah.
I think what that really struck a chord with me, because I think you're thinking, I've got all this persona or this person who I want to be. And it's not allowing you to be that person. It's actually at odds with that person. And it should be a two-way street. Like, your job should serve you as much as you serve the job. And let me say that again, your job should serve you as much as you serve the job. So if that's not happening, then there's this disconnect. Something's broken with the system. It's not working.
That's right. And so it's harder to do your job well. And then it becomes this vicious cycle. You underperform, you become a bit of an imposter. You know, you can do better, but you're not. And it's because there's some things at odds there. And so that's certainly some of the work that I do with people, is get them really clear on, we call it the purpose, vision, and mission. So your purpose is why am I here? What's my destiny? What's my reason for being on this earth? And if you're a spiritual person, it's what's the greater plan for you, the bigger picture, the greater scheme. The vision is, where do you see yourself in the future? Who do you want to be in the future? How do you want your life to be? Because some people will say, I don't want to be doing this in 20 years' time, but I can't keep going like this. You know, this is not, I don't want to be doing the same thing even 5 years or 2 years or 12 months down the track. And so that's the vision side of it. And the mission is, how do you want to be in that moment? Or what kind of work do you want to be doing that takes you to that place in the future? And so getting very clear on that. So that makes it easier for you to go, when you have clarity around those things, it's easier to make decisions. Because if the things you're doing now don't align with that bigger plan, then you go, I've got to change now. Why do I put this off any longer?
Yeah. Okay. So imagine that we've got some clarity around that, and we know that we've certainly got, so I've been using this persona called Donna, and she's early 50s, been teaching for 30 years, had enough, wants to get out, and she knows that she's in the wrong place, and she's aware that maybe she wants to help people. She's probably an altruist, like your nurses and teachers. They tend to be altruistic types. And so she wants to do something good in the world and leave a legacy that's going to have an impact for the future. But she just is so overwhelmed and, just like looking at it like a bunny staring into the headlights, that she can't make any decisions or, sort of even decide what the next step will be. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with that level of stress and overwhelm, so that she can stay well enough to plan the exit strategy?
So I've had teachers that I've coached that have been in similar situations. One thing I love to say to them is, well, what would you say to a student that was experiencing the same thing in terms of trying to get an assignment done or getting a project done, or they're feeling overwhelmed? And so without going down that path, that immediately helps because the teacher says, well, this is what I would say to my students. It's almost like they coach back on themselves. But the sort of advice that I give people is focus on the greatest tool that you can have is to, in the immediate situation of overwhelm and stress, is to focus on what's within your control. And that's certainly what you would say as a teacher. No doubt you say that to students on here, just focus on this now. There's all this overwhelm. So getting clarity on what you can control. And my favorite tool, I can't recite it, I can't remember it, I need to memorize it. It's the serenity prayer, but everybody knows it. Goes along the lines of, let me know what's within my control and what's not, and have the wisdom to know the difference. God, it starts with God, grant me the serenity. But it's a beautiful prayer that's used by Alcoholics Anonymous for that very reason. When you just feel overwhelmed and you want to collapse in a heap, focus on the small things that are within your control. And the other element to that is, if you do have a plan, if you do have a big picture, but there's just so many things, and every time you sit down to look at it or approach it, you go, it's too big, it's just too big, it's that saying again of, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one mouthful at a time. A journey of 100 miles starts with a single step. And so being able to, when things are big and insurmountable, just focus on small steps that you can take. If you can break it, if you can do a brain dump or a mind map and explore all the components so that you can then go, well, I'm just going to focus on that mouthful right now. I can swallow that. I can digest that. Then that's a way of dealing with that overwhelm in terms of so much to do.
I love that. I was talking to a get out of teaching client the other day, and she wanted to set up her own business. I said, okay. And she said, I've just got myself an ABN, which is a business number, so she can trade. And I said, okay, so the next thing you need to do is work out, well, one of the next things, a next possible step is to work out how you can take money. And so she was going to go and set up a PayPal account so that she could, get, when people are ready to pay her, she's got a means to take it. Because sometimes that creeps up on you, that first customer, and you go, oh, hang on a minute. I've got nowhere to put the money and I've got no way to take it. So it's good to have that in place. I think it's quite a good early step, and a pretty easy step to sort out to, open a bank account and get Stripe or something like that. So that's, I love that the idea of having a mind map to work that out. I think that's really great general advice for everybody.
And a good question as you do that process is because what happens is, where the overwhelm occurs is where there's different steps and different stages that keep coming back, and you get lost with all the noise. So by doing a mind map, you can kind of have a bird's eye view. But in that process, a really good question to ask as you're doing that, as you're mind mapping, is to say to yourself, and before I can do that thing, what's at least one thing that needs to happen before that can happen? And before I do that thing, what's one thing that needs to happen before that? So you can start to branch out and feather out all of the things that need to happen, so that then those random things at different stages aren't flooding your mind and causing that overwhelm. You can actually start to see a plan unraveling in terms of the sequence of things that might need to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And I think knowing the sequence then takes out that anxiety and that stress, because there's a plan. There's little steps that you can take. And then I guess the other side of that, though, is you look at that and go, oh my gosh, there's like 1,000 steps I have to take. How am I going to begin that process?
Yeah. And look, the other tool that I would suggest in terms of that overwhelm, a great question to ask yourself is, when there's so many things, so many projects that you're working on, is to ask the question of, where can I create the biggest impact with the least amount of effort? What's going to give me the biggest the biggest win or the biggest value or the biggest reward with the least amount of effort. And certainly when you're starting that journey, that transitional journey, Elizabeth, I'm sure you can appreciate you need the small wins. You need to feel like you're getting somewhere. So it's really good to look for the things that will have a really big impact with little effort and focus your attention on those, because they will help propel the others into action as well.
So Barbara, can you think of an example of what that might be for someone who's about to leave?
I guess one of the things that if I was going to talk to somebody in that process, would be to get really clear on the things that are important in terms of how you want to work or the kind of things that you enjoy in the work environment. So whether somebody's changing into a business or whether they're changing into another totally different career, go, what do I like doing? What don't I like doing? What do I love? What don't I love? What are the sort of people I love working with? What are the sort of people I don't like working with?
Yeah.
And that's a really easy step to take in terms of getting clarity, because what I find when I'm working with people that are transitioning is that they develop a narrow point of view or a blinkered point of view. So they start looking for job titles or opportunities that fit within a box. But when you do that activity of actually listing those things, it allows you to think creatively and outside of the box. So you could actually go in a completely different direction that you hadn't considered otherwise, by just focusing on those key ingredients or elements that might exist somewhere else in another industry, another field type of work, another environment that you hadn't considered. But those are common threads that exist in terms of what you want. So that could be something very easy to start on in terms of getting clarity. You know, I'm very clear of what environment I want to create for myself. And then that gives you a step forward in terms of where you want to focus your attention and what you're going to say no to, which is another really important thing, particularly for teachers. What you get very good at saying no, the things you're going to say no to, because it's very easy to be yes to so many people.
Yeah, I often talk, so on that topic of, you know, what are you creating that environment? When I'm having those conversations, I'll often ask people, if you were working in a hotel, would you be the maitre d' out the front greeting all the guests? Or would you be back behind the scenes doing the admin stuff, or, you know, getting the rooms ready, or, you know, I don't know what else happens in a hotel, but, you know, those kind of things, behind the counter stuff. And nearly every teacher I talk to says, oh, no, I want to be up the front greeting the guests, because they're people. But not everyone does. Some of them say, oh, no, I'm done with people. I need a break from people. I want to go behind the counter.
Yeah, it's a really good question to ask. So, for example, my 18-year-old son he's finished school and he's trying to decide what he wants to do. And we know that a trade is probably the good thing for him, but he's anxious about it. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And so he's been working since he was 12. He's had a really good, solid part-time job journey, and he did some work experience with a mechanic, and he absolutely loved it, and he didn't want to go back to school after he did it. And so I was able to have the conversation with him about, well, what specifically, because he doesn't want to do a mechanic apprenticeship. He's like, oh, you know, I'm not sure that that's what I want to do. And so I said to him, well, what was it about that you so loved? When you didn't want to leave when you finished that work experience, why did you love it? And he said, I think it was because it wasn't like I was just working on one thing all day. There was lots of different things, and I enjoyed the diversity. And I said, well, mate, that's a great, we've identified something. And so when we go and talk to the apprentice person, you'll be able to say, I like to have variety in the work that I'm doing. I like different projects and be able to mix it up. And that's and he also likes to work autonomously. So we're already getting an idea of the kind of work that's going to match him in terms of his career path. Based on it doesn't matter what industry, it's getting clear about how he has pleasure in the work that he does.
Great. If he wants to come and do my garden, he can come and do that.
Yeah, he'd probably enjoy that too.
Yeah, well, lots of diversity there. You can mow the lawn, you can weed the garden, you can, I don't know, clean the mower.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Okay, so if someone wanted to work with you with the service that you offer, let's just talk about the time taming element a little bit more. What are the kinds of strategies you use to help people just sort that stuff out? Because it sounds like I imagine, bringing you into my world and everything's like in order and organized when you're done. How does that happen?
Great question. So people will often come to me for one thing or the other. So they'll come to me for time management, or they'll come to me for stress management. But as I mentioned to you, what we've uncovered and what we focus on with the Hinwood Institute now is all areas. So for me, it's very much about putting out fires for people first. It's where the biggest pain is. And it's like if you go to a doctor and you say, oh, my big toe's hurting. Well, it's okay, we'll fix the pain and we'll treat that. But then now we need to look at what caused the pain in the first place. And so it's doing blood tests and looking at diet, and maybe we uncover they've got diabetes or whatever it is. It's unraveling all of that. So when people come to work with me, it is about putting out the biggest fire or putting out the biggest pain point. Elizabeth, you talked about your inbox before. It's not uncommon for people to go, oh, I'm just stressing me losing important emails or forgetting things or not finding things. And so, or being able to prioritize. So that may be something that I work with people first. But once we've got the time and the stress management stuff kind of under control, then we can look at the bigger picture things as well. So like the purpose, vision and mission, getting clarity on what's at the core of who people are and what they value in life, and interestingly, that's where people will procrastinate. We choose to do things that are more rewarding and more valuable to us over the things that aren't. And so that helps change habit or help people to become more self-aware in their daily practice. And sometimes there'll be things in there around communication or assertiveness. So if you actually have to stand up and speak up, like when I was saying, being able to say no, but being able to do it in a way that's professional and well-informed. I'm saying no, and this is why I'm saying no, but here's what I propose as a solution. And that's incredibly empowering for people to be able to communicate that way, make decisions and take action that way. So they're the kind of things that I do with people through that journey in terms of allowing them to be more resilient, to be able to be more productive and bounce back when things are challenging, and moving forward in a more cohesive and probably more rapid as well. Yeah.
Okay. So if someone wanted to work with you, what would that look like, the process of it?
So at the moment, what I do is one-on-one coaching. That's predominantly what I do. And it's not counseling. It's not financial advice or any of those things. I coach people, and what that means is a ongoing accountability and action steps to move people forward. So I work with people, typically I see them once a week, but only for half an hour or 45 minutes, because we're eating an elephant, so we're breaking off bite-sized chunks, and I really want to see people master that mouthful before they take the next course of action. And what normally happens is, in working with people, is that we get on a roll and things are moving really well and we're seeing some progress, and then storm, disaster, chaos happens. And so we stop what we're doing and come deal with that chaos and then go back to bigger picture kind of things. We are working on a program at the moment that is about creating a community. So that will be more of a comprehensive self-directed learning, as well as intense learning with a community of people and a support network and mastermind groups. So we're hoping to launch that in a couple of months, where we've got this community of people that can support each other and going through a similar journey. Yeah.
Nice. And so how would they actually find you?
You can reach me through the hinwoodinstitute.com. That's my website. I'm also across all social media. So if people search Barbara Clifford or The Time Tamer, they will find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or TikTok or any of those
Oh, you're on
platforms.
TikTok as well, aren't you?
Yeah,
Brave.
I love TikTok. That's my stress management. I love going, like I said to you before about reality TV. TikTok's where I go and laugh. I probably spend more time there than Facebook these days as a stress relief. Laughter, lots of laughter. Yeah, so people can, I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me through any of the social medias, or they can email me, barbara@hinwoodinstitute.com. No AU, just .com.
Okay. And so, Barbara, as we wrap this up, I've got one final question for you. What's your favourite song?
My favourite song is Black Betty by Spiderbait.
Oh, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
What is it about that song that you like?
The reason I love that song, believe it or not, is when I was giving birth to my first son, I had a very rapid labor. I was really overwhelmed. I guess every woman that's given birth probably has had this experience. I was scared and it was happening very fast. My labor was very fast. And I can remember that radio on the song, and I can remember the midwife going, well, that's inappropriate, but it just stood out because it was like, Black Betty, bam, bam, come on, Black Betty. It's like, whoa, we're going to get this done. We're going to get this baby out of me. And yeah, it just is one of those songs that when I hear it, it's like, it doesn't matter how scary it is, how extraordinary it is. There's an end and you're going to get to the other side of it. It's going to be incredibly rewarding.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That's brilliant. And thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today too. It's been a real joy.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, so we've just had a little bit of a break from after the podcast, and Barbara was just sharing her actual methodology for creating that mind map. So do you want to go, Barbara?
Yeah, so I find this tool, my mentor, Dr. Judy Hinwood, she taught me this method, and it's a very creative process, but it's so simple. And I now teach this to business leaders, and I actually have taught it to high school students who get overwhelmed with assignments. So when you've got lots of things swimming around in your head and you're trying to get clarity around something, you're trying to plan something out, this is a really, really powerful and creative way of doing it. So what you do is that these tiny little Post-it notes, every idea that you can think of, you just write it on a Post-it note and dump it. And it doesn't have to be in consecutive order. So if, for example, with a high school student starting an assignment, I go, don't just think of the first paragraph or the first sentence, just any idea of things that you want to answer. And for a high school student doing an assignment, it might be, well, what are the 3 questions you have to answer? They would be the first thing you would drop out. And as you drop ideas, you can start to move on the Post-it notes, you can move them under the question. If you are planning a business, you might go, or a project within your business, you might go, well, here are the landmarks, here are the milestones or the things that I want to be core elements to this project. I know I want it, but I don't know how it's going to unravel. And you just drop all of the ideas on Post-it notes so that you can then move them into pillars. And then once you've moved them into pillars, you can start to rearrange the order of them. And Post-it notes are great because you can move them so easily. And I love it. I've done it when I've had to, for example, I've had a client that said to me, we want you to do a 6-month program. Here are all our problems. Here's all the training we want. How can you deliver it in weekly or quarterly workshops? And so I had to drop all of the key learnings. What do I want to teach them? These are all the problems that they've told me. Here are all the things that I can cover. And then I was able to cluster them into subject matter. Okay, this is about performance. This is about motivating your team. This is about challenging behavior. This is negotiation. And what you also find is, whoa, this pillar is actually massive. I probably need to break it up into 2. These can be 2 different elements or different components. So doing the Post-it notes gives you the able to pull out, but also zero in and easily get clarity and create a plan that you can then put into implementation. So a high school student can plot out an assignment and they can see where they're really strong in one area but really weak and might need to explore it. And then they've got a structure that they just have to go and write. It's all plotted out in front of them.
So if we extrapolate that to the teacher wanting to get out of teaching, maybe the first step is that doing that piece where you go, what's the kind of life I want to create for myself?
Yeah. So, and then that's exactly it. So you could just randomly do ideas. So for example, when I'm teaching this to people as a methodology, we do it as goals. So we go, okay, thinking about all the goals that you have, just drop them down. And then the pillars will be, what is relationships, what's financial, what is career, and so you can go, wow, this is, I haven't given this any thought. I really haven't given this element any thought. When I did it for me, when I was taught that in exactly the same way, the personal pillar was really low. I was going, okay, really think about what are some of the personal goals that I want. And then I started to, and if you ask questions around senses, that really helps as well. What do I want to smell? What do I want to taste? What do I want to hear? What do I want to see? So the things that I came up with is, I want a veggie garden. I want to build my collection of essential oils. I want to have an atomizer in every room in my house. There were things, little goals that I was so focused on business and career, I didn't even think about some of those little personal goals. So yeah, if you can think about the things that you want that are important to you, break them into pillars, and then you can see, wow, I haven't really explored that and I need to give that some more thought, or do some more research around that, or unpack that a little more. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's my pleasure.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast presented by Larksong Enterprises with your host Elizabeth Diakos. Thanks for listening. If you need more support in your journey out of education, check out larksong.com.au and book a triage call. I'm a career transition coach for educators, and I support teachers in their journey out of education and into a life they love. I've been where you are now, and you don't need to do this alone.